We're following breaking political news. Jagmeet Singh has just announced that the NDP no longer support the confidence and supply agreement with the Trudeau Liberals. And for more on what this means, let's bring in Scott Reid, CTV's political commentator. Scott, let's just get right to it. What does this mean?
Well, this is a very big deal. For a number of years now, the minority government of Justin Trudeau has been able to govern without the fear that it could face a parliamentary defeat that other minority governments historically have faced. And that has given it a real lease on life. That lease is now up. That means that an election could happen anytime in the coming year. And look, Bakari, this move does not mean it is certain that we will have an early federal election, but it certainly means that an early election is now possible. And by early, I mean earlier than the fall of 2025, which by all accounts is the preferred timing for the federal Liberals.
Okay, Scott, the full announcement, it was posted to social media just under 2 minutes in length. It's a video announcement from Jagmeet Singh. Some of the verbiage is this, quote, "I've ripped up the supply and confidence agreement." Let's talk about that, the verbiage. Ripped it up.
Ripped it up. Corporate greed, he accuses the Liberals of being guilty of, says they don't deserve another chance. This is for the NDP the first day of the next federal election, whenever the actual election begins. I say that because the NDP have known that this very atypical agreement they've had with the Liberals was holding them back. It was anchoring them to a deeply unpopular federal Liberal government. And at some point, they were going to have to separate themselves so they could fight against that government rather than govern with Justin Trudeau. So that's the logic and the strategy behind it. But as you point out, this language is sharp. It isn't just saying, you know what, we're going to set the agreement aside and now we'll force the Liberals to move on a vote-by-vote, issue-by-issue basis. No, it declaims the Liberals as a government that's no longer unworthy. So it's going to be interesting to see how Jagmeet Singh backs that rhetoric with actions when it does come to confidence votes in the next year.
Scott, did you see this coming?
Oh, yeah. I mean, not specifically today, but you talk to anybody that was involved in federal Liberal politics, and you knew that eventually the NDP was going to have to pull out of this agreement. And again, let's be precise. What this will mean in practical terms is that the NDP will now conduct themselves as have these parties over the years with other minority governments, meaning that in the next budget, which is a confidence bill that the government can be defeated and force an election upon, then the NDP will barter with the government, not under the terms of some broad agreement that gives the government complete confidence that it will survive, but it'll take them into breakneck negotiations where it'll be winner or loser. And that's how minority governments have acted in the past. That's how this will happen now. But certainly it sounds like Jagmeet Singh has made up his mind that he wants to take on the Liberals rather than work with the Liberals.
Okay, Scott, walk us through the immediate and not so immediate future, the next weeks, months. What does this look like?
The Liberals will rush to microphones and say, chill out. This is a big deal. We no longer have that assurance that every parliamentary vote will work out in our favor, every confidence parliamentary vote will work out in our favor. But that's fine. We'll just retreat to working with the NDP on things that matter, trying to find the votes on an issue-by-issue basis. So the Liberals will signal this does not mean an election is necessarily coming immediately, that they recognize that they have the obligation as the governing party to reach out to others and to make Parliament work. For the others, it will mean a real heightened sense of excitement. You're going to see the Conservatives come to the microphones today and say, well, if Jagmeet Singh believes in his own words that this government doesn't deserve another chance, then he should never vote confidence in this government again. And that means that they would try to force an election at least as early as next April, when you would expect a federal budget. So what to expect next? Competing responses from various parties. The government will try to calm the waters. The Conservatives will try to churn the waters. And the NDP will be sitting there in its tiny lifeboat of 19% popular support, hoping that it can get out of the swill.
Hey, Scott, can we drill this down just a little bit more? What does this look like for the political landscape across the country when it comes to parties? And, I'd also like for you to take a look at the, recent election in Toronto, St. Paul's. What happened there as well?
Well, Toronto St. Paul by-election, obviously the beginning of June, safe Liberal seat, should not have been lost, was lost to the Conservatives. Look, just today, you want to talk about the political landscape, let's add another little factoid to the issue set. Today, Angus Reid has the Liberals polling at 21%. 21%. Only once in the Liberal Party's history, in the history of the party since Confederation, has it polled at such a low point. So that explains what's happening today. That explains why Jagmeet Singh is trying to position himself as a true opposition to the government rather than an ally of it, because the government is so unpopular. The landscape across the country, what this really fundamentally means is that you now have a highly volatile, unpredictable outlook. It does not mean that you're going to have an election imminently, but it means you could. It means that the parties opposite Trudeau could get together, band together, and bring in a vote of non-confidence if they so wish. Now, that's not likely, because it isn't like the NDP are knocking the lights out and look like they're going to win the next election or even leapfrog the Liberals. But that could happen. And here's the thing about minority parliaments, and I worked for a prime minister who presided over a minority parliament. They're damned unpredictable. And that's what Justin Trudeau has not had to live with. The confidence supply agreement gave him predictability. That predictability is now gone. He could live without the fear of a forced election. Now that fear will be upon him.
Okay, Scott, before we wrap up, let's talk about what this means for actual voters with respect to, the recent pharmacare, dental care.
Well, those programs are already set. They're in the fiscal framework, so they're funded. Obviously, if there's an election and you get, for example, a Pierre Poilievre government, they'll have to decide whether or not they're going to continue those programs. Obviously, their priorities will be very different. Well, what does it mean in terms of voters? Well, if you look at the polls, what it means is that voters will, at least by next fall, but maybe now even earlier, get what they say they want, which is the opportunity to have a vote. And you're going to hear the Conservatives as an example. They're poised to win a vote should there be one. You're going to hear them banging on that, hoping for that. You're going to see the NDP trying to distance itself from the Liberals even more, given this rhetoric. And you're going to see the Liberals trying to say, listen, people hate politics. We're not going to give you a steady diet of politics. We're going to focus on priorities that matter to people. And they're going to, more than anything, have to design their tactics, their timing, and their priorities around avoiding an unwanted defeat in the House of Commons. Because right now, on the face of it, if the Liberals were defeated in Parliament, they would be defeated in the next election, and that would be the end.
Okay. CTV's political commentator, Scott Reid. Scott, thank you.
Thanks, Bakari.